I stood on the porch with my suitcase digging into my palm. My eyes still burned from crying at Mom's funeral just 2 days ago. Greg, my stepdad, glared at me like I was a burden he'd finally decided to shake off. He tossed my old hoodie at my feet and muttered, "I married your mother, not you." Then he slammed the door. I stood there for what felt like an hour, tears burning my eyes, not sure where to go. For years, I'd tried to be good, tried not to upset him or make him regret marrying a woman with a teenage daughter. But now Mom was gone, and all he saw was a burden. Everything moved in slow motion. I touched the locket around my neck, Mom's picture inside, and whispered, "What do I do now?" Cars passed, people stared, but nobody stopped. Eventually, I grabbed my suitcase and texted my friend Riley. My hands shook so badly I could barely type. I said I needed a place to crash, just for a night or two. I glanced at the dark windows of the house that used to be home. Then I walked away, heart pounding, feeling both lost and strangely determined. Riley opened her door with a sympathetic smile. She wore pajamas and had bedhead, but she didn't care. She pulled me into a hug so tight, I almost cried. "Come in," she whispered. I dropped my suitcase in her tiny living room. She lived in a cramped studio with a sagging couch, a kitchenette, and barely enough room to turn around. But to me, it felt like the safest place in the world. She handed me a spare blanket. As I settled on the couch, she sat beside me, her voice gentle. "I'm really sorry, Ava. Your mom was amazing, and Greg." She paused, uncertain how to finish that thought. I told her everything, the funeral, the coldness in Greg's eyes, the words he spat at me. She shook her head in disbelief. "Stay as long as you need." "But," she looked at me seriously, "you can't just sit here all day, sinking. You have to figure something out." I nodded. She was right. My mom wouldn't want me to give up. Still, the grief felt like a weight on my chest. I promised Riley I'd start looking for work in the morning. Deep down, I was already thinking about how to get my life back. 3 days later, I landed a part-time gig at a local coffee shop. It wasn't glamorous, minimum wage, early mornings, but it was something. The smell of espresso hung thick in the air, and my manager, Sonia, barely glanced up when I walked in. She was always in a rush. Most customers were kind enough, though some snapped at me for getting their orders wrong. My feet ached from standing. My eyes felt heavy from lack of sleep on Riley's old couch. But I forced a polite smile. I needed the paycheck. The worst part was having to greet people with a cheerful, "Good morning," when I felt hollow inside. Every time I pulled a shot of espresso, I remembered how Mom used to love the smell of fresh coffee in the kitchen. I'd blink back tears and focus on measuring milk or wiping counters. During my break, I'd sit in the back, phone in hand, reading old texts from Mom. "Don't forget your coat, honey. Proud of you. I love you." The simplest things now felt precious. That night, when I collapsed on Riley's couch, I realized I was barely coping. But I was surviving. Mom's memory kept me going, her voice in my head whispering, "Keep trying, Ava." Late one night, my phone buzzed against the cushion. An unknown number. I felt a strange dread in my stomach. I clicked ignore. But it called again, and again. Finally, I opened my phone, saw several missed calls and texts. The first text read, "Ava, it's me. Please pick up." I froze. Greg. A mix of anger and confusion rattled me. He'd thrown me out without a second thought, so why was he trying to reach me now? I refused to answer. Riley glanced over from her bed, which was basically 2 feet from the couch, and noticed my tense expression. "You okay?" she asked, eyes half closed. "It's him," I mumbled. She frowned. "Block him," she suggested, rolling over, but part of me wanted to see what he had to say. Another text came in. "We need to talk, please." At 2 a.m., the voicemail alert pinged. Against my better judgment, I listened. His voice was low, trembling like he'd been crying. "Ava, I'm sorry, I don't know how to fix this, but please, call me." My heart pounded. I didn't understand what game he was playing. I deleted the voicemail and stared at the ceiling, wide awake until dawn. The next afternoon, my phone buzzed while I was wiping tables at the coffee shop. I'd forgotten to mute it. The screen flashed. "Greg." I glanced around, then slipped into the storage room to answer. "Hello?" My voice came out shaky. He sounded different, soft, almost scared. "Ava, I'm so sorry. I was out of my mind after your mom died. I pushed you away." My stomach twisted. Part of me wanted to yell, "You threw me out like garbage," but I stayed quiet, letting him speak. I just couldn't handle the grief. I know I messed up, he continued. His voice broke, and I heard him sniff. You were her world, and I took my anger out on you. Tears burned my eyes, but I wasn't sure if they were from sadness or fury. You can't just apologize and expect everything to go away, Greg? I whispered. He begged. Let me make it up to you, please. I know you don't trust me, but give me a chance. I didn't commit. I just mumbled something like, I have to get back to work, and hung up. My heart pounded as I stood in the cramped storage room. I couldn't tell if his remorse was real or another betrayal waiting to happen. Over the next few days, Greg bombarded me with texts, long paragraphs of apologies, random stories about him missing Mom, or short messages that just said, I'm sorry. I showed them to Riley, who frowned. It sounds genuine, but it could be manipulation, she warned. One evening, Greg asked me to meet in person, promised he'd explain everything face to face. My hands trembled as I replied, okay. I picked a public park in daylight, half afraid he might ambush me. When he arrived, he looked haggard, dark circles under his eyes, hair unkempt. I'd never seen him like that. He offered a weak smile. Thanks for coming, he said. We sat on a bench under a big oak tree. Soft sunlight fell through the leaves. He started talking about Mom, how he missed her laugh, how lost he felt. His eyes got misty, and he wiped them quickly. I felt my heart twist. I missed her too, so badly. For a moment we mourned together. Then he reached over and squeezed my hand gently. That was the first time he'd ever shown me physical affection. I want to be better, he said. Please, believe me. I found myself nodding, not entirely sure why, but part of me wanted to believe him. 2 weeks later, after several more meetups with Greg, always in public places, he finally said, Why don't you move back home? I tensed. He'd called it home, as if that house didn't also hold the memory of him slamming the door on me. But I was exhausted from living on Riley's couch, from the cramped mornings. Riley had her own life to live, and I felt like I was intruding. Greg's voice trembled. I want to make things right. I know it won't be easy, but we can grieve together. It's your home too. Something about his tone, it felt sincere. Or maybe I was just desperate. Either way, I said yes. Riley was supportive, though she pulled me aside and asked, Are you sure? I can't stay here forever, I sighed, hugging her. She nodded but still looked worried. The day I moved back, Greg even helped me carry my bag inside. The place was spotless, like he'd spent days scrubbing and organizing. He gave me a nervous smile. Your room is just how you left it. I felt a swirl of emotions as I entered. I clutched my old teddy bear, one of the few things I'd had since childhood, and whispered, Mom, I hope I'm doing the right thing. That first night back, everything felt strange. I was in my old bed, but the house was too quiet without Mom's laughter or late-night tea kettle whistles. I drifted into a restless sleep. Sometime around midnight, I heard a muffled voice. Groggy, I got up and followed the sound. Greg was in Mom's old office, his voice low, urgent. I crept closer, my ear almost against the door. He was whispering, Yeah, she's back. First thing tomorrow, be here by 8. My pulse hammered. Who was he talking to at this hour? The lawyer? A friend? Why did they need to come first thing in the morning? I tiptoed back to my room, mind racing. Maybe I was being paranoid. Greg had just apologized after all. But something about his urgency made me uneasy. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe it's about the funeral costs or final paperwork for Mom's estate. But an odd feeling crept up my spine, reminding me how easily he'd tossed me out before. Finally, I slipped under the covers, telling myself I'd wake up early. I needed to see whoever was arriving and find out what was so important that it couldn't wait. My alarm blared at 7:30 a.m. I threw on a hoodie and jeans, then quietly hurried to the living room. I peeked through the curtains. A sleek black car pulled up at exactly 7:55. A tall man stepped out, sharp suit, briefcase in hand. Recognition hit me. My mother's lawyer, Mr. Thompson. He'd handled Mom's legal affairs for years. I heard Greg open the front door. She's finally here, Mr. Thompson said, as if discussing me. I had no idea what that meant. My heart pounded as I tiptoed closer. Greg ushered him inside. They exchanged polite greetings, then Greg's voice rose in a cheerful lie. Oh, Ava was visiting some relatives, but she's back for good. I nearly choked. Visiting relatives? I'd been kicked out. Why was he lying? Steeling my nerves, I stepped into the room. Mr. Thompson smiled warmly, shaking my hand. I'm sorry for your loss, Ava. Good to see you doing well. I managed a weak nod. Thanks. They both sat in the living room. Greg offered coffee, acting like the perfect host. I couldn't shake the sense that this was all an act. I forced a smile, playing along while my gut screamed, something isn't right here. I perched on the edge of the couch, hands clasped tight. Mr. Thompson explained he was here to finalize loose ends of Mom's estate. He asked polite questions. How I was adjusting? If I had everything I needed. Greg kept jumping in with answers, painting a picture of stability. Every time Mr. Thompson tried to ask me a direct question, Greg would nudge the conversation elsewhere. She's been doing well, he'd say, but she needed some time away with family to heal. I nodded, forcing a tight smile, all too aware I was swallowing a giant lie. Part of me wanted to blurt out the truth, that Greg had thrown me out. But something in his eyes told me to stay quiet. Mr. Thompson looked at me kindly, like he suspected I wasn't telling the whole story. Still, he didn't push. I'll need a bit more information, he said, then scheduled a follow-up visit for next week. After he left, Greg exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. He turned to me. That went well, he said, voice full of relief. I returned his gaze, trying to keep my face neutral. My stomach churned. Why did he need me here to keep up this facade? For the next few days, Greg kept me at arm's length. He'd encourage me to relax, then send me off on errands whenever I got too close to Mom's office. I'd say I was going to wash dishes or do laundry, and he'd immediately suggest some last-minute grocery run. My suspicion grew. Late one evening, he said, I need to talk to Mr. Thompson alone tomorrow. Just basic paperwork stuff, nothing you need to worry about. But I was worried. A part of me felt he was hiding something big. That night, I scrolled through old text messages from Mom looking for clues. One message stood out. Trust me, honey. Everything is in place for you. I had no idea what she meant. It was sent a week before she passed away. The next morning, Mr. Thompson arrived again, but Greg sent me out for groceries. When I returned, they were wrapping up. The lawyer paused to ask, Are you settling in okay, Ava? Greg quickly answered for me, She's fine, just a little overwhelmed. I forced a smile and nodded, but my gut twisted. Something was terribly off. Later, when Mr. Thompson left, Greg gave me a proud grin. You did good today, he said, voice oddly warm. It sent chills through me. The moment the front door closed behind Mr. Thompson, Greg turned to me with an almost fatherly smile. You did good, he repeated, clapping me lightly on the shoulder. My skin prickled. He'd never shown this kind of praise before. Not when I got good grades, not even when Mom would brag about my accomplishments. Now, he was treating me like a teammate in some shady operation. He paused, eyes a bit watery. I'm glad you're home, Ava. I love you. I blinked. The words felt foreign coming from him. My heart pounded with conflicting emotions. Part of me still craved fatherly acceptance, but another part recoiled, sensing manipulation. Thanks, I whispered, stepping back. He walked away whistling, as if a huge weight had lifted off his shoulders. But for me, that weight was just getting heavier. I locked myself in my room and tried to calm the swirling panic in my chest. Why did I feel like a puppet being controlled? What was he telling Mr. Thompson that required me to be present? I remembered the times Mom confided in me about finances, inheritances, insurance policies, but I'd been too young to fully grasp it. Now I suspected Greg was using me to secure something, and I needed answers. That night, I wandered the halls, trying to collect my thoughts. My feet stopped at the door to Mom's office. The handle wouldn't budge, locked tight. Greg never used to lock that door. Mom used to keep it open so she could see me in the hallway while she worked. My throat felt tight with nostalgia and anger. I remembered Mom always kept a spare key hidden in her nightstand for emergencies. Carefully, I checked her bedroom. Sure enough, I found a small key taped under the drawer. My hands shook as I crept back to the office, quietly unlocking the door. Inside, the air was stale, dust still on Mom's old books and files. Greg's laptop was on the desk, but what really caught my eye was a tall filing cabinet. The bottom drawer was partially open, like someone left it in a rush. I slipped on Mom's reading glasses, she always had them handy for small print, and began sifting through folders. My heart pounded louder with each document I read, scanning for my name or references to our family trust. It didn't take long to stumble on something major. A thick folder labeled Ava, Trust and Will. My breath caught. I had to see what was inside. My hands trembled as I pulled out the folder. It was heavier than I expected, stuffed with legal papers, copies of birth certificates, and a hand-signed letter on crisp stationery. I recognized Mom's elegant handwriting immediately. I flipped through the trust documents, scanning words like assets, inheritance, and sole beneficiary. My eyes widened at the numbers, a total estate valued at millions, including the house, investments, life insurance payouts. It was all in my name. Then I spotted a short letter from Mom. "My dearest Ava, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. You need to know I've set up everything to protect you. You deserve every bit of the life I worked so hard to build." Tears slipped down my cheeks as I read her words. All this time, I'd felt completely alone. But Mom had been thinking about me, protecting me even beyond the grave. Suddenly, a sound in the hallway made my heart leap. I quickly stuffed the papers back, closed the drawer, and locked the office behind me. Back in my room, I sat on the bed, adrenaline surging. Mom left me everything. So why was Greg acting like he owned it all? I didn't have the full story yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't powerless. After locking myself in my room, I read every page on my phone's camera, taking photos of the documents for backup. One detail stood out. There was a clause saying I could access my inheritance immediately if I was no longer under Greg's guardianship before I turned 21. My breath caught as I realized the implications. If I stayed under Greg's roof, he'd maintain control as my legal guardian until I turned 21. But if I moved out, or if he kicked me out for good, the entire inheritance would pass directly to me. Suddenly, everything made sense. Greg didn't bring me back because he cared. He needed me here so he could keep the money under his thumb. The moment I was gone for good, he'd lose all control. My eyes burned with fresh tears, remembering how he'd thrown me out right after Mom died. He must have found out about the will afterward, realized his huge mistake. That's why he begged me to come back. All those apologetic texts, the warm gestures, even saying "I love you," none of it was real. The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. He needs me here to keep the millions. If I leave, he has nothing. I felt a wave of betrayal and a surge of resolve. I sat on my bed, tears pooling at the corners of my eyes, phone clutched in my hands. My head was spinning, with a mix of anger, sadness, and a strange sense of power. Greg had manipulated me, used me like a chess piece in a game I never asked to play. I remembered the moment he'd slammed the door in my face, the helplessness I felt standing on that driveway. Now, I saw the bigger picture. He'd needed me to stay ignorant so he could control my inheritance. I ran my fingers over Mom's locket, still around my neck. I whispered a small thank you to her for thinking ahead, for giving me a way out. She must have suspected Greg's intentions, or at least feared something like this. When I heard Greg's footsteps in the hallway, my body tensed. He knocked. "Dinner's ready," he called, voice calm. The same man who'd thrown me out weeks ago. My heart pounded. I knew I couldn't let him see I'd discovered the truth. So I cleared my throat, faked a yawn. "I'm not hungry," I said. "Might skip dinner." He lingered. "You sure?" "I'm sure," I called, forcing calm. My mind was already planning the next move, an escape. The next few days, I pretended everything was normal. I made small talk, did chores, even watched TV in the living room with Greg, acting like we were some version of a regular family. All the while, I was silently gathering everything I needed. I waited until Greg was out to make secret copies of every important document in Mom's office. Scanned them with my phone, emailed them to myself, took screenshots, stored them in multiple places. Just in case. Meanwhile, Greg seemed satisfied that I was settling in, occasionally dropping paternal comments like, "I'm proud of you," or "We're gonna be okay." Each time, I felt like screaming, but I kept calm. Then, one night around 3 a.m., I finished packing my duffel bag. I included only the essentials: clothes, phone charger, a few mementos of Mom. The rest I could replace later. I couldn't risk him catching me in the act. By 3:57 a.m., I was fully dressed, shoes on, heart in my throat. I carefully unlatched the back door, wincing at every little creak. Holding my breath, I slipped out into the dark. As I walked away, the cold air hit my face and my hands trembled. This was it. I was taking back control of my own life. The night sky was still deep, stars barely visible, when I dialed Mr. Thompson's number. It felt surreal calling Mom's lawyer at 4 a.m., but I couldn't wait until morning. On the fourth ring, a groggy voice answered, "Hello." It's Ava. I rushed out. Sorry for calling so early, but this can't wait. There was a pause. I imagined him sitting up, turning on a lamp. Ava? What's going on? I took a deep breath, words tumbling out. Greg kicked me out after my mom died, then convinced me to come back so he could control my inheritance. I found the documents. I know everything. The line was quiet for a moment. Then Mr. Thompson's tone sharpened. Are you safe right now? I'm at a bus stop about a mile from the house. I need help. I need to figure out how to finalize the will so Greg can't manipulate me anymore. He told me to meet him at a 24-hour diner a few blocks away. I'll get dressed and head over, he said. After hanging up, I clutched my duffel bag, adrenaline still pumping. This was the first step in ending Greg's control for good. I found Mr. Thompson already seated in a corner booth at the all-night diner, coffee steaming in front of him. I slid into the seat opposite him, exhausted yet wired. He wasted no time. Tell me everything, he said gently. I spoke in hushed tones, explaining how Greg threw me out, then lured me back when he realized the inheritance hinged on my living under his guardianship. I showed him the photos of the trust documents on my phone. Mr. Thompson's expression turned grim. Your mother's instructions were clear. She wanted you protected. The trust leaves everything in your name. Greg was only meant to oversee things until you turned 21, unless... He pointed to the clause. You're no longer in his care. I nodded, heart thumping. Which means I can take control of it now, right? He sipped his coffee, thinking. Legally, yes. We just need to file paperwork confirming you've moved out. You also need to sign some affidavits about Greg's actions. Once that's done, the courts can transfer everything directly to you. Relief and anger swirled in my chest. I couldn't believe how close I'd come to never learning the truth. How soon can we do this? I whispered. He set his coffee cup down, eyes determined. We can start this morning. After a quick breakfast, though I could barely eat, Mr. Thompson and I drove to his office. The sun was just starting to rise, casting pale light over the empty streets. Inside, he typed furiously on his computer, drafting documents. A petition to revoke Greg's control, a request for immediate transfer of assets to me, and official letters informing Greg he was no longer the executor of Mom's estate. I felt my heart hammering. This was real, happening fast, but it was also a long time coming. I signed each document carefully, my signature shaky at first. By the last page, I felt a sense of calm determination. As he notarized everything, he explained the next steps. We'd file these with the court, notify the bank, update the deed to the house, freeze any accounts Greg might be accessing. I stared at the stack of papers. This was my mother's legacy, laid out in black and white. She'd worked so hard for everything she had. She wanted me to have a future safe from manipulative people like Greg. Mr. Thompson handed me a final set of forms. Sign here, and Greg can't touch a cent. I grabbed the pen, my voice steady. Let's do it. We arrived at the house just before noon, accompanied by a sheriff. The ride over felt tense and surreal. My stomach did flips the entire time. Greg answered the door, a look of confusion turning to panic when he saw Mr. Thompson and the uniformed officer behind me. What's going on? He demanded. I stood there, feeling a rush of mixed emotions, anger, betrayal, fear, but also strength. I handed him the official envelope. This is from the court, I said quietly. He ripped it open, eyes darting across the pages. You can't do this, he spluttered. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. Under the terms of the trust, Ava has the right to assume full control of her inheritance. You no longer have any authority. You must vacate the property. Greg turned red. He looked at me, disbelief in his eyes. Ava, we can work this out. Let's talk. The sheriff stepped forward. Sir, you need to pack your things and leave. Greg's gaze darted around, as if searching for a loophole. But there were none. His manipulation had been exposed. I swallowed the lump in my throat, refusing to look away. I thought of Mom's last words to me. Stay strong. And I was. Greg's hands trembled as he gathered random items. He stuffed clothes into a suitcase, cursing under his breath. I stood in the hallway, watching him with a detached sense of awe. You ungrateful little, he started, eyes flashing. I raised my hand, cutting him off. My voice shook but held firm. Stop. You married my mom, not me. You don't get to treat me like property. He scowled, glancing at the sheriff, who stood nearby, arms folded. This is ridiculous, Greg spat, turning to Mr. Thompson. She's just a kid. Mr. Thompson shook his head. Actually, she's an adult with legal rights, and the terms of the trust are clear. Furious, Greg zipped his suitcase. He stomped to the door, glaring at me. Your mother would be ashamed of you. The words stung, but I held my ground. My voice wavered only slightly. Mom wanted me to stand up for myself. She'd be proud I didn't let you take advantage. He snorted, pushing past me. The door slammed behind him, echoing through the silent house. For a moment, I just stood there, heart racing. Then I exhaled, tears threatening. This was the end of Greg's control, and the start of something new for me. After Greg left, I wandered through the house with Mr. Thompson. The sheriff departed once the eviction was served, and the weight of the quiet rooms felt overwhelming. Sunlight streamed through the windows, highlighting the dusty photo frames Mom had arranged so carefully. I paused by one, me and Mom at the beach, beaming at the camera. I picked it up, gently wiping the glass. You okay? Mr. Thompson asked softly. I nodded, tears in my eyes. It's just, she's everywhere here, her spirit, her warmth. He placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Your mother loved you more than anything. She wanted you to be safe in this home. I smiled, heart aching with both grief and gratitude. After Mr. Thompson left, I wandered into the kitchen. The kettle was still on the stove, a reminder of the tea Mom used to make late at night. I brewed a cup of chamomile, her favorite, and slowly sipped it at the table. It felt so strange being here without her, but it also felt like closure. For the first time in weeks, my shoulders relaxed. I was home at last, free from Greg's manipulation. And I promised myself I'd honor Mom's memory in this house. The next day, I spent hours tidying the office. My office now. Going through old files, I stumbled on a sealed envelope labeled, "For Ava." The handwriting was Mom's. My pulse quickened as I carefully opened it. Inside was a single page, dated just a month before she passed. Her words were gentle, encouraging. My sweet Ava, it began. I know you'll find this when you're ready. I'm so proud of the person you've become. I know life hasn't been easy, especially after I remarried. If Greg ever tries to use you, I hope you remember your strength. You were always stronger than me. Tears dripped onto the paper as I read. This trust is my gift to you, to ensure you have the life you deserve. Find your path, be brave, and never forget how loved you are. I pressed the letter to my chest. For so long, I'd felt alone, but Mom had been looking out for me all along. She must have sensed Greg's potential for selfishness, or at least wanted to safeguard my future. Gently, I tucked the letter back into its envelope and placed it in the top drawer, next to a photo of Mom. Thank you, I whispered, feeling her presence. Over the next week, I redecorated the house. New sheets, fresh paint in the living room, flowers by the windows. It felt cleansing, like reclaiming this space for the life Mom and I once shared. I filed the final paperwork, transferring the title deed to my name. My bank account reflected the inheritance, but it wasn't the money that made me feel secure. It was knowing Greg could never manipulate me again. One afternoon, my phone rang. Greg's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it for a moment, then blocked the number. No more second chances. He was out of my life, just as he'd chosen when he first slammed that door. I made myself a cup of tea, chamomile, like Mom used to make, and stood in the kitchen, gazing out the window. In my mind, I heard her voice telling me everything would be okay. And for the first time in a long while, I believed it. I set the mug down and whispered the words I'd wanted to say ever since he kicked me out. You married my mom, not me. A shaky smile crept onto my face, more thinking of Greg's furious expression when he realized he had nothing. Finally, I could let it all go. And that was the best gift of all.